everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today I'm here with my good pal, my good time boy, Prince. We're going to be talking today about budgeting and general finance stuff in Lolita. So the reason that I wanted a friend for this video is because I want you guys to watch this video less as specific advice, because this is just like what we do and what works for us, but more as a way to like have a conversation about finances in the Lolita community. As you know, I really like making videos about things like no buys and budgeting because I think it's not something that's really talked about. So you can take this video as kind of us having a conversation to maybe give you a way to have a conversation with other people in your life, or to have a conversation in the comments about what your habits are too.
And try to make this whole thing less taboo.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we'll get into it more, but there's specifically an avoidance around this topic. People have the right tools and language to talk about budgeting and financing, but I think in the Lolita community, we specifically avoid talking about it a lot.
There's a stigma.
Yeah, but you and I do have these kinds of conversations a lot, and you being like a classic and gothic Lolita have a different perspective from someone who's like in sweet, who's interested in new releases and stuff. So we'll get into that, and I think we should start right away with the first question.
Let's get into it.
Ready?
I'm ready in 2 seconds.
Lace market?
No!
To start, what are your current spending habits and financial goals just specifically for Lolita fashion this year?
So my current spending habits, I would say I make about 1 to 2 what I call big purchases a month. And when I say big purchase, I mean anything over $100.
Yeah.
To me, that's a big purchase.
I agree.
Yeah. So like that could be a main piece, it could be a pair of shoes. So 1 or 2 a month, which is about, for me, 1 per paycheck.
Okay.
Because I get paid twice a month, as opposed to on a monthly basis. And my goals for Lolita fashion, honestly, is just more filler, less main piece.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I would say for me is to curb impulse spending completely. So those are my goals.
Yeah. For me, I think they're pretty similar. Like, I think I'm always trying to curb like the impulse spending.
Can I ask, how do you define impulse?
I think it's sort of like something that you didn't know you wanted until you saw it, or you don't know if you can afford it, but you buy it anyway.
Yeah, I think it's important to define that.
Yeah. So actually, this is a perfect example. I bought something recently that was kind of an impulse buy.
Okay.
So it was a yellow cardigan. I already have a yellow AP cardigan. They're very, very similar, but it was $50.
Okay.
So I wanted it.
So
I bought it.
Right.
But I could afford it. But I do still consider it like an impulse buy because it's not something I need. It's not something I was planning to buy. And I only bought it because it was inexpensive and available.
I got it.
You know?
I would also add to that and say, for me, an impulse buy is something that I've thought about purchasing for less than a day.
Yes, I agree.
So
if
like you
can't
see it
sleep
on
on
Lace
it,
Market and you're like, immediately bin it or buy it now, rather. That's super impulse.
Yeah. Versus like right now I'm considering buying wrapping cherry that's like available on Rakuten.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, I'm going to sleep on it.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, well, actually, I think the price is a bit high, so I'm going to wait till it goes down a bit.
Totally.
So like it could have very easily been an impulse buy, but when you decide to sleep on it, like I feel like that's what I'm trying to do more often.
That's a great habit.
And also just have like a stricter wish list even for non-main pieces, because my main piece wish list is like super well defined. It's like specific cuts and dresses and colorways. But like my non one is more like jewelry.
Right.
Like a canetier, and it's like, well, like let's think about the specific colors and shape and size and budget you would want for it instead.
So that you're not buying something again on an impulse that you might regret.
Exactly. Like I like having that yellow cardigan I bought, but to be fair, I fully didn't need it because it's super similar.
Right. I mean, I feel like because it was $50, it's
easy to justify.
Big a deal,
yeah.
You know? And I mean, I feel like we should get the caveat here that like, just because we're saying $50 is not a lot, like maybe for some people that is a lot. Like we're just going off of our own standards here and like where we are at in terms of our financial situations.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, for sure. Like for me, $50 personally is not a big deal.
Well, it's like you mentioned, like a big purchase is like $100 per month per paycheck for you. Like I would say my current spending habits are similar. It's like there's much more that I could afford, but I really want to save money. So like my spending habits currently revolve more around how much I can save, and then being like, well, if I can only buy, let's say, $80 worth of Lolita this month to meet my saving goal, that's what I'm gonna do.
Right.
More than telling myself like, well, I have $100 to spend on Lolita this month.
Right.
Because, you know, when you have like pets, random vet bills pop up. Or 1 month you need to buy food and litter and this and that. Or you need to replace something in your house. Like these things pop up.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I set a specific, like I have $100 to spend per paycheck for Lolita, I would end up chipping away at my savings, where it's better to chip away at my like Lolita budget instead.
And of course, like, I mean, you're talking about like pets and like big situations, but also there's other fun things that maybe you're saving up for. Like when you were saving up to go to Japan, like that was a huge part of your goal setting.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I might be going to Japan this year.
Oh my God.
You know? No, I am. I booked it. But again, like you last year, for me, that's a huge part of my saving now. You know?
Totally.
So it's not just about like all of your fun money going towards Lolita either, because that's not necessarily realistic.
Yeah, I agree.
We have other hobbies, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't, good for you at work, but like
the majority of people do, and even if you don't, you might be spending on events in Lolita.
Yeah.
Like just going out and going to meets and stuff if you're in a very active com can be expensive
totally.
too.
Yeah.
So I think that leads perfectly into the next question or part to talk about, which is what is your approach to budgeting and how has it changed over time?
Oh, you want me to go first?
I don't mind if you want.
You go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So right now when it comes to budgeting, I function with a like dollar per day amount, which, you know, disclaimer, I do know is similar to yours. But I have X amount of dollars that I can spend per day in terms of cost of living, general stuff, you know, bills that I'm splitting with my girlfriend, stuff like that. That's more like necessities.
Totally.
And then I have X amount of money per day. That's what I call fun money or personal money, which is stuff that I can just spend willy-nilly on myself.
And you don't factor food into that?
Well, no, groceries and takeout goes into expenses.
Okay,
yeah. My expenses, like the X amount of dollars per day covers everything other than personal stuff because we split takeout and groceries and everything.
Okay.
And like I'm responsible for all the bills and my girlfriend pays off the rent.
Got it.
So that's why I track everything A to Z because essentially everything that isn't rent I'm paying for.
Okay.
So I follow it pretty carefully. Honestly, like sometimes you're going to spend more than the like dollar per day, but that is just kind of when I like put a limit on myself. And like let's say my per day is like 50 but I spent 75, it's like okay, well tomorrow I should only spend 25.
Like girl, slow down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or it's like I try not to really spend on like personal stuff, like buying myself random shit throughout the week, so that at the end of the week, in theory, let's say I had like $100 to spend because I didn't spend throughout the week just on random bits and bobs, you know.
Totally. And that probably helps manage any anxiety you might feel about finances as well.
Yes,
right?
because it's like I'm constantly like aware, and I have like a budget book where every day I write down my expenses and I separate them by like my personal stuff and also like my expenses for life. So like I'm always very aware of like what I'm spending. And to be honest, my previous approach to budgeting was not having one.
That's why I didn't want to answer.
I mean, for a long time, I just kind of like spent and then like put whatever money I had left in my savings. But honestly, that's because I was living with my parents and the only bill I had to pay was groceries. At that time when I didn't have a budget, it's because I wasn't really living like a regular adult life. You know, working full time but not paying a lot of bills isn't very common. But then when I started buying Lolita, it's like previously I would never have really spent $250 a month. Right. You know, like I was never buying that much clothes. I was not traveling or anything like that. So then when it's like, well, now I'm making these like big unnecessary purchases and then I moved out, it was just kind of like you have to budget or you're going to screw yourself over. And also then you start sharing bills and stuff with a partner. And to be fair to them, you need to be responsible for your own money.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Doesn't need to be said. But yeah, no, that makes total sense. And yeah, like I said, I didn't want to go first because I also didn't used to have a budget. But so right now for me, what I do is I get my paycheck twice a month. And when I get my paycheck, I automatically put $200 in savings. And then I pay off my bills, rent, whatever. And then all that money left, I do the same thing as you.
Yeah.
And I do the $1 a day.
Yeah.
So I take all the money I have left, I divide it by 14, and that's what I have to spend every day. And I include groceries and food in that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a pretty large amount. I'm comfortable. So the way that works is that I have that $200 in savings that ideally I want to use for like a trip or emergency funds. Like that's not really money I touch.
Yeah.
But in that $1 a day, at the end, if I have money left,
that's your
which I
money.
almost always do.
Right.
That's my Lolita money. So that's how I work now. I didn't used to have a budget.
Yeah, exactly.
The problem with me is that I did not have the situation with you where I was like, had the very good reason of living with my parents. I was living in an apartment. I was an adult paying bills and whatever. I just did not grow up with a lot of financial knowledge. And I was very much raw dog in life. It was like, YOLO, I hope I can make next rent. And that was terrible. And I'm ashamed of it, but I learned from it because you get into situations where you're like, oh my God, like the anxiety of debt and the anxiety of, can I pay for XYZ that I need? It's never going to be worth a moitié. Well, OP.
The thing is, also my experience is like, it makes you not like the thing you bought.
Totally. It makes you resent it.
Yeah. And you mentioned your savings and stuff, so I thought maybe I should add like my specific situation there too. But I also have like a savings. I have an emergency savings that I have consistent access to. And I also have a savings to spend account, which is where I put the excess like fun money I have. Right. So if I didn't spend all of my personal money budget during the 2 weeks before my paycheck, I put that in a savings to spend account that I can access at any time. And I also have a TFSA, which I have no clue if that's the same term in like other countries, but at least in Canada.
It stands for tax-free savings account.
Yeah. It's a savings account that's more similar to an investment account. So like your money grows, right? Where versus a regular savings account, you'd get very, very little interest. So I have a strict amount that I have to put every paycheck in that. Where my emergency fund is just kind of it's like kind of what I have left. I feel like it gets complicated, but like I'll use specific example, but this isn't real money. Okay. Like let's say I pay off all of my bills and I have like $425 left. So I would put the $300 in my TFSA. I would put $100 in my emergency fund, and the leftover is the $25, which goes in my savings to spend, because it's kind of like it doesn't reach the 100, and I would never put more than $100 in my Lolita fund per paycheck. I like having complicated rules. It's like my wardrobe. Yeah, it's fun because it feel like if I'm loosey-goosey with myself, I don't end up respecting, you know? Like, if I'm like, put money in savings, that's not strict enough for me.
Yeah, you need an actual dollar amount. Exactly. That's me too with the $200 I was talking about. Yeah. I need to do that.
Yeah, because or else it's too tempting, because it's like, well, it doesn't really matter, because it's like you didn't really think about it that much, for me at least.
It sounds like we both had like a journey of like growing up and understanding budgeting, and speaking for myself, I know my life has gotten way better.
I agree. Yeah. Since budgeting, a really good goal to have is just to generally try and like save as much as you're spending. If you can realistically, we're adults with relatively affordable rent. We also live with partners and we have full-time jobs above minimum wage. Yeah. Like, don't base your situation on that if you are working like under minimum wage, or if you are like a minor, or if you like live with your parents. Those are completely different situations, which is again why this is more of a conversation than like an advice video.
Yeah, like I feel like I should know, like I'm 30 years old. Yes. You know, it took a long time to get to this point, and it's normal to take a while to get to this point. Totally normal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, like, I've always said the time to make a financial mistake is in your 20s, not in your 30s or 40s when you start thinking about retirement. Yeah. No, but like legit. And also you are going to have to think about like health issues, and like, if I like encounter a health issue in 20 years, am I going to have enough in my savings to cover that?
Yeah. Well, like this doesn't apply to us, but like if you want to have kids, you know, if that's something in your future, like that's something else to consider. Like so many factors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
Budgeting is good. I feel like this is connected to budgeting. How do you feel about no buys and low buys in general? Like, they're really popular in the Lolita community. I have mostly good opinions, but I do have some spicy takes on it.
Ooh, I'm interested.
I feel like people use it as a Band-Aid solution.
Interesting.
I feel like a lot of the time people overspend and then go on a no buy and like have a really hard time going on a no buy because like they don't actually want to be on the no buy. They just don't have any money left, which I have been there. I have done that. I have been like, well, I'm going to go on a no buy for a month because I spent 2 months worth in a week.
Right. And then when they end the no buy, they just go right back to those habits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where now I try and use a no buy more as a period of like saving up money for the next time I buy, so that I know exactly what my limit is the next time I buy something.
That's a good approach.
So it's like, okay, well, let's go on a no buy for 2 months. I think that's realistic. I don't really feel like buying anything, and I'm gonna save up in that time, and let's say I come out of my no-buy with $600 to spend, I can spend that $600 over the course of a week or a year if I want, but then I go on another no-buy to save that money up again, which can also be seen as a band-aid solution, I think. But I do try and go on no-buys like just when I feel like I'm not really sure what I want to buy anyway, because it's like, well, so it's like you're scrolling and scrolling. It's like you're seeing things and you could buy them. Again, yellow cardigan, right? But you don't necessarily like know what you want to buy. I think that's a good time to go on a no-buy and like take a look at your wardrobe, take a look at your wish list and stuff, which yellow cardigan did kind of make me think like I should probably reevaluate my wish list before I buy another haul or something this year.
We should call this video Yellow Cardigan.
Yellow cardigan.
I feel like something we can all relate to, Lolita or not, is when you have money to spend, you feel like, oh, I have it, so I should spend it.
Yeah, it's like burning a hole in your pocket.
Yeah, you're like, well, why not?
Yeah.
But then that's how you get into the yellow cardigan situation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I'm going to be fair. That's when you get into situations where you're going to buy perhaps a $600 purchase that you didn't necessarily really want.
Yeah.
And then is it going to sit in your closet? Like, are you going to get use out of it? For me, a no-buy is about being more mindful.
Yeah, I agree. And like a lot of the dresses that I've ended up selling, I bought them when I just had money. But you know when there's like an inkling in the back of your head that like maybe this isn't the perfect dress? Those are always the dresses I ended up selling because it's
me too.
I just wanted to buy a dress.
Me too.
Versus like the ones that I really wanted, I rarely sell dresses, so I still have them.
Yeah, I used to be so bad with that, and I have since sold so many pieces.
But I have a question. Were you worse with that when you were in Sweet Lolita or
no,
in Classic and Gothic?
No,
okay.
Either way, it was just, I used to have the exact problem I just described, where it's like, I have the money, so why not? But it was never something that I had really reflected on, oh, wow, I really want this. I'm going to get so much use out of it. And all those pieces, I always ended up selling. Great example. I'm going to expose myself here. You have a wardrobe video with me.
I do.
On your channel.
With old school stuff.
With old school stuff. And some Gothic that I have since sold.
Yeah.
Because they weren't true number one items. And I feel like we're answering a totally different question with this. But what I'm trying to get at is that a no-buy should be a time to be more mindful.
Yeah. And
really reflect on your habits and spending. And I'm all for them on the condition that when I'm on my no-buy, I'm not on Lace Market. Often not even on socials as much, because it's, for me, just too hard to stick to the no-buy.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like if I'm still scrolling or still going on like Lace Market and checking Mercari and Rakuten, I consider that kind of like a low buy. Like I'm not trying to buy something, but I am checking if a wish list thing is going to pop up.
You are tempting fate.
Yes, for sure. But that's when I have the money to spend.
Right.
If I have $0 in my like savings to spend account and no budget that month, I block all those sites.
Yeah, it's just too tempting.
But when you do have the money to spend and you know you could like comfortably buy like a wish list item or something, then I will still look. It's just I will not buy something the same day I see it. Right. Or at least I will try not to. Yellow cardigan.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
You know, because like I feel like socials and Lace Market or whatever, they create that feeling of FOMO.
Totally.
You know, you're like, oh, if you don't get this, like, oh, that's it, you know?
Especially like being in a different time zone and shopping on like Japanese sites, because if your shopping service is only open from like what's basically 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. and you're kind of like, if I don't buy this now, it could be sold out by the morning.
Oh, okay. I have to say, as a Gothic and Classic Lolita, this is a huge issue because, and this is going to be so interesting because you're sweet, but like, as a Gothic and Classic, a lot of my wish list pieces are super rare, will pop up very randomly on like Frill or Lace Market, and I can never predict when. And if I don't get it in that moment, it's like I might not see it again in 3 years.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's so good to have money in savings in case that happens.
Yeah.
You know?
And like I've never had debt specifically because of Lolita, but when I caught myself thinking like, okay, I have a like Japonica order open. Like if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll check Mercari just in case something's available. That was when I was like, girl, shut that order, get that shit shipped and stop buying, because it's
not
like,
in the middle of the night.
Yeah, when it's like I'm gonna wake up and not sleep and interrupt my melatonin cycle just to look at Mercari. Oh. Like, that's when you...
Not the witching hour.
Period. Shopping at 3 a.m. It's like, that was a moment where I was like, priorities need to be reevaluated because spending should never be more important than your sleep or something like that.
But like I've also been there.
Oh,
honestly.
I'm sure we all have. Yeah,
but
for sure.
I mean, long story short, no buys are great as long as you're actually reflecting during your no buy and you're not just going back to the same habits.
I'm big pro no buy, but more in a way of using it, not just like, okay, let me not buy, but like how can I use a no buy to my advantage? Because I think just telling yourself I'm gonna go on a no buy, I'm not gonna look at any dresses, it's hard to manage, where like keeping yourself busy and like being kind to yourself about needing a no buy and using it to like reflect is probably a bit more productive.
Like not to be corny, but it is self-care.
Well, it's just like the anxiety of spending isn't something you want to deal with if you like should not be spending and can't afford to.
Period. I mean, just reframe your no buy. Like instead of thinking of something being taken away from you or denied, how can you benefit from this?
All right, so last question for this video already. I feel like it really went by quick.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the general relationship between the Lolita community and budgeting? What's the state of it in your opinion? What's been your experience? And also, how has it affected you?
First off, what relationship between the Lolita community and budgeting?
It's a toxic one.
Ooh, I'm going to be honest. It has, first off, affected me tremendously.
Yeah.
There's no relationship really. It's, as we said at the beginning of this video, this type of conversation I feel is not encouraged and even seems sort of uncool.
It's definitely not present online.
No.
You know, and I feel like it's like a joke, like to talk about your finances, you know, which we can get into. You can continue like with your experience, but I agree overall.
Yeah, I mean, being a gothic and classic, although I'm sure this applies to sweet too, I am exposed, I think, to a lot of people that are more financially well off than I, whether that be, you know, luck or just a great job, and that's fine. But it's hard to remind myself that that's not my situation and that's not something I should be comparing myself to. Mm-hmm. And then in a world of social media where people are displaying their purchases on a pretty regular basis, and because of social media, we don't know where people stand. Like, we don't know if they're in debt.
Yeah.
We don't know if they just have a lot of money. All you see is what people are buying. Mm-hmm. That lack of transparency can really, really affect someone. And it has affected me. Mm-hmm. And I've often felt like, oh, I'll never be able to afford XYZ. Why am I even in the fashion? And that's a terrible attitude to take.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do feel like, well, obviously I made this video for a reason. I don't really feel like there's enough just ability to talk about it. Like you said, it being kind of uncool. I feel like there's this sort of shame or stigma around just bringing it up. Mm-hmm. And like I understand because that's outside of the comm too, like that's outside of Lolita. People just have a hard time talking about money. But we're in a community and a fashion that oftentimes does center buying and new purchases. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we should be a bit more responsible because, like I said, it's not a necessity. Mm-hmm. Like, you kind of have to be able to, at the very least, admit what it costs to be in the fashion. I think last year I bought 6 main pieces. Mm-hmm. And I sold one. Mm-hmm. And in total, I believe I spent around $2,000, $2,500. And that's on everything.
I couldn't tell you how many main pieces I got. I think it's about 4 or 5.
It's so fun to buy dresses. It's so fun to buy Lolita, but it's not necessarily as fun to own up to what it cost you. I just don't really like this mentality in the general comm of like, I'm not going to look at my savings. I'm not going to look at my spending.
Oops, my wallet slipped, you know.
Yeah, we both don't like jokes about debt and financial situations. Sorry if this is you, but I do think they're very immature. I just think that when you are projecting that to other people, especially if you're someone with a large following in the Lolita community, it's not really just about you anymore.
No, it's just setting a really, really bad example. Like, I tend not to share my purchases online, even if it was something I could afford. Yeah. I'm like embarrassed because I guess maybe there's the visibility associated with it of like, I don't want people to make assumptions about my financial status. Yeah. Yeah, it's not good out there.
It's tough. I mean, in general, with the struggle bus that the economy is currently riding, I understand why it's like really hard and you constantly feel judged. I mean, that's just social media in a nutshell. And I think about this a lot because I make haul videos, You know, I buy clothes and I share it online in like one go.
Yeah.
But I always try and give disclaimers and help people understand, just because on one hand it's unrealistic to pretend you're not spending and to not show it, because that's not reality.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like, if you saved up for 6 months, I think you should say that.
Yeah, and you're very transparent, and I really respect that about your videos. Whereas someone that's like, here's a haul, but like no context, maybe they got that in a week.
Yeah.
You know, and some people do.
Yeah.
But maybe it was 6 months. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
And I think some of the best things we could possibly do for our community is to stop making these kinds of jokes.
Yeah, the jokes aren't funny.
They're not funny. And
get better material.
Be like, as much as you can, try not to participate in any sort of competitive culture.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is something that really hits home for me as a gothic and classic, because the dresses are so rare. Mm-hmm. There is so much competition, and it sucks because it's like, we could be making like a community around this and sharing something we love and enjoying the pieces we have, but it doesn't always come to that. And like, you know, and finances play a huge role in that. Yeah. At
the end of the day, I'm not able to afford what some people can. And there are people who can't afford what I can. And that's the very nature of being in a hobby.
I thought you were going to say the free market.
But that too, being in part of capitalism and living in a society. But like, that's just how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
But pretending that any purchase and any financial decision is good for everyone, that's the danger, I think. Yeah. I just think that we all need to think as like individuals what we're contributing to when we make a post about finances or purchases, just because like that's the nature of social media. It will be seen by other people and it will make an impact on someone. Just being more conscious of how we talk about finances and actually like having these conversations and admitting that budgeting is good, having savings is good, continuing to like think more about every purchase. Like you said, sleeping on stuff and really weighing the pros and the cons. No more yellow cardigans. No more yellow cardigans.
Like, I think we just have a big habit as a community of buying something that kind of just sits in our closet.
Yeah, I agree. And I do that. I have done that plenty of times, especially with things like when I started wearing Lolita fashion, I was like, well, you need headdresses, right?
Right.
But then as I started to wear Lolita to work more or in a daily life more, most of my headdresses I don't get that much use out of.
Right.
But like, I'm attached to them. I kind of don't want to.
No, keep them. But like, now you know, like, do I really need to buy more?
Yeah, exactly.
You know? But like, how many times have you been on Lace Market where you see a listing and the listing says like, I never wore it?
Yeah, that's very common on Japanese sites too. Yeah. And it's like a dress from 2010 and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Or, you know, a dress that was released maybe earlier in the year that there was a lot of hype associated with it. And like, the story tells itself, you know, that someone bought something and like, okay, you didn't really want it.
Yeah, I've definitely done that. Like I said, like all the dresses I've sold are ones where I felt kind of somewhat neutrally about when I bought it. I wasn't like, fuck yeah, you know?
So more mindfulness.
Yeah, those mindfulness is the key word here.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
look at us, we're like, you know, like influencers, yoga.
Oh,
sorry.
Don't note to everyone everywhere all at once, please never call me an influencer. That's the day I quit YouTube.
I just did it to piss her off.
Still love you though. So that was all the questions I had for you, but I did take some questions and suggestions for topics on my Instagram a few weeks ago. So I'm going to release a video next week where we go through your questions and your concerns, I guess, about finances and stuff. It'll be more like a Q&A period type thing, but please feel free to check that one out. There's some really good questions that we didn't really have time to cover in this video. Do you have any closing statements, sir?
No, I just love that we talked about this, and I hope that you go ahead and talk about this with your Lolita friends, because we should all be talking about this.
We'll talk about money together. Yeah. But feel free in the comments below, please leave any suggestions that you have, how budgeting or works for you or your financial goals this year. Any questions that you have too. I mean, we'll both be in the comments answering if there's anything. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one next week, which is how time works. But until then, bye-bye. Bye.